Good morning and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. As we continue to celebrate Labor Day this week, we're spending time exploring some of the occupations in Bible times, and even more thinking about our own occupations and how they are also a calling from God to serve one another and to honor God. We call that a vocation. Today we want to look at what I'd call money matters and talk about merchants, money changers, bankers, and tax collectors. They had merchants in the Bible times, just like we do today, and they held a vital place in society. The streets were the place for the marketplace, and usually near the gate of the city or in the open square in the center of the city. Sometimes certain streets were set aside for some particular trade or type of merchandise. For example, in Jeremiah 37, he refers to Baker's Street. Money wasn't necessarily exchanged because, in fact, actual money was fairly rare. Instead, most items were bartered rather than being sold. Often there was no set price for an item, which meant there was a lot of argument and haggling. Usually both sides walked away from the deal feeling like they had gotten the better of the transaction. And sometimes people got food or goods on credit. Most of us have a pretty bad impression of money changers based on how Jesus drove them out of the temple, but it's not just us. Most people then had a bad impression of them too. In a society where people were coming from all over the world, there would be different kinds of money circulating, and money changers would trade one type for another and charge you for the privilege. There were, as you know, money changers in the temple too. A temple tax of 1/2 shekel was required by every male Israelite who was 21 years old, and many people wouldn't have had one of those or the exact coin they needed to purchase doves or lambs for the sacrifice there in the temple. The exchange rate the money changers were allowed to charge was about 12%. We don't know much about bankers then, except to say that in the parable of the talents, one of the men buried the money, and the king asks him, "Why didn't you put it with the bankers so I could at least get some interest?" Actually, the law of Moses forbade Israelites to charge interest on loans to charge interest on loans to other Israelites, although interest could be charged to outsiders. In the Gospels, Jesus allows a reasonable interest, but denounces all extortion or excessive interest rates. People in Bible times didn't like to pay taxes any more than we do today, but they were necessary then, just as now, to fund the government. So there were some people who had the job to collect them. In New Testament times, tax collectors were reviled even more than usual because they were collecting taxes to support the foreign Roman government. It's bad enough to pay taxes to your own government. Paying to someone else's is worse. And even worse than that, the tax collector earned his salary by collecting more than was owed. So when people saw wealthy tax collectors, they saw a collaborator with the enemy and someone who was profiting off of their hard work. It was stunning to them all when Jesus spent time with tax collectors and other sinners. We have money matters in our own society today, and the calling of the Christian is to deal with others fairly and honestly. That's living as Christ would have us live. Thanks for watching, and remember to let this day belong to God.